Welcome Nigel and Hannah to come back up and take a seat. We just have a very short time to have everyone together. I wanted to make one point about a fact about the importance of empowering girls. When women spend their income, we have found that the studies show and the organizations that are working with developing countries all understand that when women are making an income, they put much more of that back into the family than a man puts, than a man does. Maybe up to 90% of what a woman earns, she will put back into the family. And of course, when a woman even has a few years of education, there's a much more significant chance that she will make sure that her children are educated. And that is what starts to break the intergenerational chain of poverty. It's tangible. These facts about the difference in behavior between men and women as earners that's just a tangible fact about why it's so important to invest in girls. The girls, if they're educated, will then become mothers who will make sure that their children are educated. So if there was something that each of you would perhaps like to say about what you discovered about these differences between boys and girls, between men and women who are supporting families, we've got behavioral differences here, which is why it's become so important to focus on girls. Is it politically incorrect to say that, well, men have different agendas or different priorities? Or it's something that's important to just accept and move on from there?
I dared to ask in Liberia once, I said, so why don't you have an organization called Men Who Fetch Water? And they thought it was hilarious. But this is the changes we have to make. Also, men can actually go and do the heavy work and the heavy lifting. And there are those projects. We have to change the stereotypes of what men and women do, of course. But basically, it all starts with education, to let girls go to school and enjoy the same human rights. This is where it starts.
Lila, sorry.
I believe in facts. If you can get more examples out there to show that when girls come home with earnings, they're part of the whole family, the community. They move things all the time. And that is a hard fact, I think, beyond cultural stereotypes, etc. The more women you see as examples, role models like this will change, and people can see that, yes, incomes are there.
But unfortunately, it doesn't help the situation of violence against women. I mean, also in our countries where we have everything from the legal framework to very sort of, at least on the surface, an idea of equal opportunities. There is so much violence against women. Every day there is a woman dying from being beaten to death by very often her husband. So I think there is more to it, but this is, of course, you're right, and that is how it starts very often. The respect for the woman not being seen as just another goat in the family, but somebody that can bring.
Ravi?
Can I just add, I think, a lot of time when I'm doing a lot of trainings with men and boys in a room and talking about gender equality, I always tell them that close your eyes and think of a metaphor from a natural environment that describes macho. And it's amazing that a lot of time people will come with guns and daggers and a tree as a patriarch, like a banyan tree. Then say, go back to your family and try to recognize an attribute that you've learned from your grandfather, your father, that you're very happy about. And what they come up with an attribute is always about nurturing, caring, mentorship. So I thought, how do you contradict yourself? Because you're talking about this macho metaphor, which is a dagger or a hammer or a gun. The problem is that where we sit right now, what the media does is that in the same society we have men who believe in gender equality, but they are not made to become the hegemony. They're not made to become the dominant force. What you see in the media is the portrayal of men who are about using gun and violence. And that's a lot, especially with young boys, if you work, because I do work through the life cycle and do work with boys. So boys at that age get very confused. And they're like, I want to play probably with a doll, but I'm given a gun. So am I supposed to be the one who's supposed to be only the protector or a provider? Where is my role as a nurturer and a caregiver? So we just launched a very big campaign. I'm also a member of the Men Engage Alliance, which is the Men and Boys for Gender Equality. The first ever global campaign on asking for fathers to join nurturing and caring. So we really have to it's so difficult, as you said, we have, still girls and women being beaten up. We really need to completely change the paradigm, and it's so difficult. And there's no whether a man can do it or a woman can do it or a girl or a boy do it. We have to do it throughout the life cycle and do it from a very strong political, economic, and social and civil perspective.
Yes, Nigel.
But you also need to change, how do you change the power structure, though? I think that's one approach. But for me, the other thing is, if women and girls can play a bigger role in the economics and the sort of wealth generation of the community, that does start to move the dial in terms of power. The best example of this is the use of savings and loan schemes in many parts of the developing world, where these are schemes run in the community, where they're effectively like a local banking system, where the community puts its own money into the pot and then borrows it to invest in small businesses, agriculture, whatever. Now, most of those schemes are run by women. And what I've really noticed is that when they organize those schemes, then they have an economic voice, and that then has an impact upon the family relationship, because suddenly, instead of staying at home and doing the traditional tasks that women do, they're suddenly doing amazingly new things which perhaps men would have traditionally done in the past, and it starts to equalize the power balance, and because they're earning real money and bringing that money into the home, then men kind of have to take them more seriously because they're a really economic player. So there are very practical things you can do to recalibrate to some extent this power relationship. When it won't prevent sexual violence in itself, I'm not saying it will, but it builds up more respect, I think, and more equality, literally, in the economic model of the family, which then has a positive knock-on effect.
Absolutely.
I had other questions, and we are actually out of time, but I want to take an extra 60 seconds to have the panel answer one question from one of you. So who's the one person who has a pressing, urgent, yes? We can hear you, it's live in here.
Yes, I'll try to raise my voice. I'm coming from Norway.
Oh, thank you.
Coming from Norway, I'm now investing in my own education, studying at LSE in London. We're 5 students there coming from the Lebanon, United Arab Emirates, US and France, developing a curriculum where we are also establishing a school in Johannesburg, opening in 2 years, enrolling women or young girls beyond the age of secondary school, helping them in teaching them subjects like leadership, entrepreneurship, technology, engineering, math. And we are one private initiative. And you, Laila, spoke about private-public partnerships. How do you view that kind of different approaches in many countries around the world in achieving the larger targets that is set by the UN? How do these type of different instruments and initiatives support each other in achieving the ultimate goal? And does that create any conflict or risks in any of your point of view?
What a great question. This is Partnership for Change Conference. This is what Partnership for Change does. Laila.
I think that is a great question, and I'll be the first one to sort of put out the warning sign that yes, there are lots of, first of all, let me say, like, it's great that you have all these private initiatives. Yeah. On the other hand, the dilemma is that it also it takes away the responsibility of a government, possibly, So one needs to be careful here that, that the government has the responsibility to provide education for their citizens, full stop, globally. Now, where governments are not able to fill that gap, private initiatives, and bless them, will be there. There are countless examples of this. Mm-hmm. And in a number of countries, you're stuck with the dilemma of taking away the responsibility of the government. So that's, I think, a key dilemma. But also, So the responsibility of all of us is to make sure, that even though you have these great initiatives, one, the curriculums in the schools have to follow the national curriculums and all the standards that are there, but also to see that even though there are private initiatives, it doesn't take away the responsibility of the government for the different services that the government should have.
Excellent. 2 sentences, Ravi.
It's a very great question, but just to give you an example, we are right now working with the government of South Africa, working with the Young Billionaires Network, which is Nexus Africa, UN Habitat, Partnership for Change, to really bring together this public-private partnership initiative, owning the first global summit on young women. So I think definitely there is a need, and I really agree with Laila that ultimately the accountability lies with governments, but there are many more governments who are not able to deliver, because they're not so well-equipped as you're sitting in Scandinavia. So where do you really bring in some of this capitalist thinking and say that where do you apply to this work? I don't have a colleague here, Anu, who's will be coming later, who's initiated a very interesting initiative called Women Investing in Women. So, so we need to look at stronger partnership, and I'm very happy to say one big discussion we're having tomorrow is another example. We are trying to understand that how do we launch a young women entrepreneurs initiative. That's a panel right after this. So there is nobody looking at that at all. Nobody's looking at how do we equip adolescent girls on entrepreneurial thinking. Most of it is so outdated. There's no focus on ICT and entrepreneurship thinking at all. So that really needs to be revised.
Well, awareness of the niches that need to be filled is the first step, right? Thank you. Hannah, tell us where you're going this afternoon. I understand you have an appointment.
With the Prime Minister, Erna Solberg.
Very nice. So when you educate a girl, you educate a nation, and hopefully you can understand more clearly now that in doing so you also change the world, literally. Thank you so much. Thank you, panel.
Thank you very much.